Hi, so recently my husband and I hosted a dinner party at our house to announce to our families that I was pregnant. We've been married for 2 years and found out about my pregnancy a couple of days ago. I've known my husband for 5 years, we met through friends in college and have been together since then. We're both 25 and have been working at the same company, but I quit that job to join one of my friends in her new business as a partner. We discussed it and he agreed to hold down the fort financially until my friend and I were able to break even. It's been about a year since then and we're doing great right now, so even my husband is planning to leave his job and join us. We are financially stable and think it's the perfect time for us to have a kid right now, even though we're pretty young. We were thrilled when we found out about the pregnancy, and in no time, we'd invited our families over to announce and celebrate this wonderful thing. My family is just me and my parents. I don't have any siblings, but I'm very close to my maternal aunt and her family, so I also invited her, my uncle, and my cousins who are just a couple of years younger than me. That's my family, but my husband's family is a little more connected, so he had a lot of guests. Of course, his parents were invited. His maternal uncle and his family, his mom's uncle and his maternal grandparents too. He told me his sister wouldn't be able to make it because she's too sick, but we all know she's just too busy with the bottle to visit us. His sister's a bit of a mess and has been ever since her divorce last year. She lost her job a couple of months ago and has been living with her parents since then. She doesn't even look for anything new. All she does is drink and sleep, so I was relieved to learn that she wouldn't be attending because I didn't want any drama on such a happy occasion. But I guess that was destined to happen since my mother-in-law was invited. My mother-in-law and I aren't the best of friends, but we're also not on bad terms. She's just too frustrating to deal with because she clearly has a favorite child and it happens to be her daughter, the older sibling. She's the one who's been enabling her daughter so far in spite of my husband and her own husband's protests. We differ on that, but I didn't say anything about it because it's not my family and hence not my place to say anything. It was only polite to invite her, so my husband and I invited his side of the family to the event too. Initially, we'd only planned to have his parents over, but when my mother-in-law found out that I was having my aunt and her family over, too, she told my husband to do things the right way and made him invite other relatives too. He did so because he didn't want to fight with her right before announcing something so big, but that meant we wouldn't have the intimate celebration we'd wanted. I was a bit miffed about it, but didn't say anything about it because, like my husband, I didn't want to kick up a fuss right before the announcement of something so happy and ruin the happy vibe with awkwardness. So we called everyone over and it was all going so well too until after the announcement. We told everybody just before lunch was served and everyone was so thrilled for us. I got a lot of congratulatory hugs and pats on the back, as did my husband, but my mother-in-law didn't even get up from her place to congratulate us and just sat there with a weird smile on her face. We didn't know what that meant, but we didn't care because this was a happy moment for us and we wanted to keep it that way. Then we served lunch after the announcement. Everybody loved the food that my husband and I had made and we got a lot of compliments from everyone except my mother-in-law again, who was quiet all of a sudden. Afterward, everyone was just sitting around and chatting normally when my mother-in-law suddenly piped up and asked me if we were financially ready to have the baby because they're really expensive and we should think about the finances too before we rush into anything. That was weird and awkward, but I handled that well, I think. I told her that the business that I'd started with my friend had been doing well and our income was enough to be able to support ourselves and a new baby. My husband made some jokes and we moved on, avoiding the awkward topic, but she wasn't done just yet. She then went on to ask me exactly how much I earned per month, and that caught me off guard. I'm not one to shy away from discussing finances when it comes to it, but this was neither the time nor the place to be discussing stuff like this, and I didn't know why she kept bringing that up. I told her that I wasn't comfortable discussing my finances in front of the entire family and that if she was really that concerned then we could speak in private after that. So then she brought up something totally irrelevant that had happened a couple of weeks back and put me on the spot. 3 weeks ago, my mother-in-law called me up out of the blue while my husband was out with his friends. She doesn't usually call me unless it's to ask about my husband, but that day, she told me she wanted to vent a little and I agreed to let her because I thought it would be a good bonding opportunity for us. She went on and on about her deadbeat daughter and how much of a struggle it had become for her to take care of an adult without any financial help from her. She complained about her daughter and her drinking problem, the fact that she wasn't even trying to find a job and was relying on her parents for a home and food even when she was almost 30 now. Then she complained about how this was eating into her and her husband's savings and she couldn't go on like this anymore. I sympathized with her and told her I understood where she was coming from, but after some time, she abruptly ended the call and told me that she needed to go, then just hung up without even saying goodbye. I thought it was weird but didn't think much of it and forgot about it after a while. At the party, she brought it up again and asked me that the day she'd called me, I hadn't even offered to help her with money for her daughter even though I was financially stable and could very well afford to help her out. She totally put me on the spot and I had nothing to say to her, neither did my husband because he was just as flabbergasted. She said something about how we should put family first and that I should have told my husband and we should have offered to help my sister-in-law, then went on to ask if we'd be helping out now. I was going to say that I was sorry that I didn't, but before I could, My father-in-law got up from the couch and really angrily asked her when exactly she'd stop scamming all our relatives, using their daughter as an excuse. Everyone was quiet because my father-in-law was a man who rarely ever lost his temper, so if he was yelling, that meant something had happened. We were all shocked and confused, but it all became clear after my mother-in-law stormed out. Right after my father-in-law asked her that question, she snapped at him and told him that she wasn't going to tolerate this disrespect from him and walked out of the house, but he stayed back and explained everything to us. So apparently my mother-in-law had been calling up a bunch of people and complaining about her own daughter and their alleged financial situation like she'd done with me, but unlike me, most people fell for her act and sent her money to help out. That went directly into my sister-in-law's purse and she used it to buy drinks for herself but did not get the help she needed. My mother-in-law was complaining to people about her daughter's drinking problem and using it as a way to gain sympathy, so they'd send her money, which she then used to fund her daughter's addiction so she wouldn't have to spend her own money. And she didn't want to force her daughter to get a job, so this was the only way she could enable her daughter without putting her own money at risk. So far it had been working out well for her because she'd mostly been borrowing from her friends and her own family, including the people at the party the other day who were pissed when they realized that they'd been fooled by my mother-in-law. But then she'd tried to pull the same crap with her husband's sister and she didn't fall for it because she knew really well how my mother-in-law had been supporting her daughter's behavior. She'd called my father-in-law right after the phone call with my mother-in-law and told him all about how she'd been trying to manipulate her into sending her money. When my father-in-law confronted my mother-in-law about it 3 days before the dinner, they got into a really bad argument about it. My father-in-law thought it was disgusting and humiliating that she was going to such lengths and sort of begging her friends and family to send her money just so she could continue to support their daughter's addiction. And this was kind of a scam because it wasn't as if my in-laws were poor or struggling with money. My father-in-law was still a practicing dental surgeon and my mother-in-law had from her position as the HR head just a couple of years back. They had enough savings to even send their daughter to a really good rehab facility, which we all know is quite expensive, but instead of that, my mother-in-law was scamming people to save her own money but still supporting her daughter's terrible drinking habits. They hadn't been speaking for the days leading up to the party but had decided that they'd pretend everything was okay just for our sake. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for them because my mother-in-law was right back to her guilt-tripping ways and my father-in-law couldn't stand the way she was behaving. He apologized to all of us for ruining the day and left shortly after that, as did everyone else. Then it was just me and my husband and he was seething that his mother had been doing this behind our backs. I was glad that I hadn't picked up on what she was hinting at over the phone back when she'd called me, because obviously if I'd offered to send her money to help her out, then that would have just been used to fund my sister-in-law's addiction and that'd be a total waste of money. My husband and I were both a little upset that the party had ended so badly, but nevertheless, we decided that we'd end the day on a good note and got a tub of vanilla ice cream for us. We put on a movie and watched that while having ice cream. At around 10, he left the room to go brush his teeth before bed, but I still wasn't done with my ice cream. I'd taken a second helping and I'm one of those people who wait for it to melt a little before I dig in. I was waiting in the living room when I heard a knock on the door, and when I opened it, I saw my mother-in-law standing outside looking furious. The second I opened the door, she started screaming at me and told me that I was the reason her marriage had come unraveled today and that her husband of more than 3 decades had now moved out and was going to file for divorce from her. And for some reason, I was the one she decided to blame for all of this. My husband was still in the washroom, and because it's a little further inside the house, he couldn't hear his mom yelling at the front door, so he didn't come out to check either. I was trying to explain to my mother-in-law that whatever happened had nothing to do with me. I didn't even say anything that day and was even about to apologize to her before her husband interrupted me. I tried to reason with her, but she wasn't ready to even hear me out and instead decided to say that she wished something terrible would happen to my baby and maybe then I'd understand what she'd been going through as a mom. I couldn't take that and I don't know what came over me, but I totally lost it. I didn't have anything in my hands except for the bowl of ice cream, so that's what I threw right at her face. It had mostly melted by then, so it was a bunch of liquid ice cream that went onto her face and the front of her dress. I had enough self-control not to throw the bowl because that would have seriously injured her and she probably would have sued me for that. I regretted it almost instantly because she started screaming like she'd been shot when I threw the ice cream at her, and my husband came rushing to check out what had happened. He brought his mother in and offered her a wet towel and wipes to clean herself up, and I helped him out to find those, even though his mom was screaming the worst cuss words she could think of, which I think was a bit of an overreaction. After she'd calmed down a bit, she told me to go to hell, booked a cab, and then went away. I was able to explain what had happened only after my mother-in-law had left, and my husband had actually found the incident pretty hilarious. He said that his mom totally deserved it and that I shouldn't even have bothered to help afterward because she definitely didn't deserve that. He said that whatever his mother had said about our unborn child was really cruel, and me throwing my ice cream at her was probably underreaction, and any other, more hormonal woman would have probably thrown the whole bowl at her or something, so she was lucky that it didn't happen to her. He's taking this lightly, but I don't know how I feel about it. I'm not a person who loses control like this, and I feel terrible about what I did to her. I spoke to my parents about it too, and they said that while they don't support what she said, it would have also been very dangerous for me if I'd accidentally thrown the bowl at her, because that would have hurt her really badly. I don't know if I should apologize to her or not right now, or if I overreacted. Ida for throwing ice cream in my mother-in-law's face after she said she wished something terrible would happen to my baby. Update 1. Hey, everyone. Thanks for the comments on my original post. It's been a week since the incident took place, and I was almost going to apologize to my mother-in-law in spite of everyone's comments, but I'm glad she proved to me that she deserved every bit of what had happened to her. I was going to apologize to her today, but she sent me a video message really late at night yesterday of her and her daughter cursing me out. Both of them were completely drunk, which was evident from the way they were behaving. Also, the things they were saying were really vile and disgusting, and I don't even want to repeat what they were wishing upon me and my family in that video, including my baby who hadn't even been born yet. They were stooping down to levels that weren't even there, and for your sake and my own, I don't want to repeat what they said here, but just know that they were disgusting things. My husband almost reported them to the police, but I told him not to because it just wouldn't be worth it and would only escalate the drama and the problems. I was already a pregnant working woman. I couldn't handle any more on my plate than whatever I already had to deal with. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law are living on their own now because my father-in-law moved out the day after the ice cream incident and has been living with his brother since then. I showed him the video that his wife and daughter had sent me, intending to help him with the divorce, and he broke down while apologizing to me on their behalf. It was really upsetting to see him that way when we visited him this evening, and I almost started crying myself because my father-in-law has been a father figure to me too. My husband was very quiet throughout because of course he was upset, but he's not very good at showing his emotions. I know for a fact he'll keep this to himself and cry by himself, which is fine, but I just hope he doesn't overburden himself or anything. We visited my father-in-law today with the purpose of finalizing the divorce attorney. He'd spoken to a couple of people, but we put him in touch with a friend of ours who's been practicing for a few years now and specializes in divorces and prenups. My in-laws had been married for over 3 decades, so the divorce wasn't going to be an easy one, and we wanted him to have the best legal advice for the settlement and everything. Things could get even more complicated if my mother-in-law decided to contest the petition, so we felt like we should step in. I'm happy to help him because, with the kind of wife and daughter he has, he should have all the help he needs. Update 2. Hi, everyone. My father-in-law filed for divorce last week, and this week, my mother-in-law has pulled out all the stops in her attempts to stop him from leaving. She's gone to his brother's house where he's still living and has tried to fight and argue her way into winning him back. Don't ask me why she thought that would work, especially if she's trying to win him back. She even reached out to me and apologized because she thought that would somehow help her case, but it didn't. I told her that I forgive her, but I don't want to speak to her, and I definitely cannot help her in sorting things out with her husband. He's his own person, and his decision to leave her had not been influenced by me, so there was no point in trying to make me fix something. I wasn't a part of this, so I couldn't help them, and I can't believe I had to explain that to her a second time. She's been hysterical and has apologized to pretty much her entire family by now, whoever she'd borrowed money from so far. They'd all been kind and gracious enough not to ask for it back, but she's been offering to pay them all back because she thinks that'll help her reconcile with my father-in-law. I haven't been able to meet him for a while now since I've been busy with work and stuff, and I'm trying to work faster than usual so that I can take days off for doctor's appointments and stuff like that, just in case. So it's just been my husband who's kept in touch with his dad, and he doesn't think it's likely that his father will go back to his mom. Apparently, it's not just the scamming of relatives for money or her enabling their alcoholic daughter. There's a lot more to their marriage than what we get to see, and his dad has only started opening up about it after he filed for divorce. Now that I know what I do know about my mother-in-law, I honestly can't believe my father-in-law even stayed with her for so long, because that is one messed up woman. She's had a history of being dishonest when it comes to money and had a lot of debt racked up over the years that she'd kept a secret from my father-in-law in the initial years of their marriage, but he'd found out about it somehow and it helped her pay off those debts. He'd made her promise that she'd be transparent about her finances then on, and she'd agreed to that. They weren't as well off back then, so at least she had an excuse to borrow money, but now, she didn't even have that. She was just being stingy and dishonest. Besides that, there was also her terrible behavior in general and how she'd always taken her husband for granted. Even at this age, she refused to hire a maid to do the housework and would say that they'd split the household chores between the two of them, but most days, she'd say that she wasn't feeling up to it, and my father-in-law would end up having to do most of the chores, which made his arthritis even worse. She didn't speak to him nicely. She insisted that they continue to infantilize their grown daughter and support her alcoholism instead of just sending her to a good rehabilitation center and doing everything that my father-in-law asked her not to. So there was no other way he could deal with this situation now, and he just had to end this marriage before he wasted more of his life with this woman. My father-in-law said that he's had enough and wants his own life, separate from her now, and I say good for him. Update 3. Hey, people. I haven't had the opportunity to come online on Reddit for the last couple of weeks because of work and hospital visits. I had a health scare a few weeks ago because my blood sugar had fallen low. I've been in and out of the hospital for the last couple of weeks because I was afraid that this would lead to complications in the pregnancy, but thankfully my doctor told me I had nothing to worry about. I'd just been a little too paranoid and had completely switched up my diet, which is what led to the blood sugar fall. I'm okay now though and as healthy as ever. Now coming to what most of you guys have been asking for, an update on the situation with my mother-in-law. The divorce is ongoing and they're in the middle of negotiations right now. My mother-in-law gave up on trying to win him back and decided not to contest the divorce, but she's been very annoying to deal with when it comes to the division of their assets and property. Once again, over 30 years of marriage, they have a lot of finances that need to be separated and property that needs to be divided. The main bone of contention right now between them is the house that they've been living in. My father-in-law's proposition is very fair and reasonable, that they sell the house and split the money because that's how they'd purchased the house in the beginning. They'd pooled their money together and bought that house within a year of their marriage, so it would only be fair to do what my father-in-law suggested, but my mother-in-law wants it all for herself. So that's where they're stuck right now, but I don't think she's going to get her way. And even if she does, my father-in-law already has enough money to retire and live his life comfortably. My mother-in-law cannot afford that luxury because she has to pay back the people she'd borrowed money from, which only seems fair because she had promised to do that when she was trying to get back with her husband. My husband has cut all ties with his mother and sister, as have I. They haven't tried to get back in touch with us either, and I don't think they will, given the circumstances and how we've openly been supporting my husband's dad in this thing. He's always been closer to his father anyway, so this is no big surprise to her at all. Either way, I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that we have good news to share about the divorce in a few weeks or so.